Our next story, in many ways, is uplifting, because imagine having to walk miles for medical treatment, only to get to the medical centre, and the doctor or the health worker doesn't know how to treat your condition. An Abingdon GP who volunteers with a charity giving medical advice to healthcare workers in rural Africa is running the length of the Oxfordshire Way over 2 weekends. I'm trying not to laugh because it's going to be very muddy for you.
Thank you, Annie. Yeah,
and rather wet.
It's going to be really muddy and really wet. I'm really holding out for some sunshine.
This is Dr. Fran Fieldhouse, who will complete the... You see, I'm being optimistic. You will complete the 16-mile-a-day run.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's over 2 weekends, so that's 16 miles back to back. Yeah.
And this is and 16 is quite pertinent, isn't it, as a distance, because that's the distance patients walk for treatment in some parts of Africa.
Yeah.
Imagine walking 16 miles and you're not feeling well.
Well, I mean,
whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, well, I think that's it, isn't it? And I think probably that for lots of people, they just don't seek healthcare because they can't manage to do that. And it just makes you realise how, despite the pressures on the NHS, which we're all very aware of, how incredibly lucky we are
absolutely.
to have healthcare here.
Let's talk about this charity then. It's virtual doctors.
Yeah.
How does it work? Give me an example.
So it's a really simple premise. So the idea is that we use mobile phones to save lives. And so what we provide is a virtual doctor, a volunteer doctor, who's accessible via a mobile phone app to give medical advice and support to a local healthcare worker. So when a patient in Zambia manages to get to the health centre, these health centres are manned by healthcare workers, not by doctors.
Okay.
There are estimated to be 2 doctors per 10,000 people in Zambia.
Okay.
Which, very few. They're all based centrally. So most primary care is done by healthcare workers. So they're very good. They're very used to treating certain conditions. But obviously, like with all of us, there are some things that they don't know what to do and they need advice. And so what they do is
because they can't just go to the computer and Google it.
Exactly.
Just doesn't happen. It's not there. There is no Wi-Fi,
and they don't have those systems in place to be able to phone up consultants, maybe like we could in the UK. So what they do is they use our team of volunteers. So we've got 70 doctor volunteers in Zambia and in the UK, and it's a whole range of specialties. And the healthcare worker fills in the app. They can take photos. So if it's a skin rash, they could take a photo.
So say, for example, somebody has walked however many miles to get to their healthcare, and they've got a really nasty, peculiar rash on their body. The healthcare worker goes, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
They can get on the app on this phone.
Exactly. Take a photo. They then would pick a dermatologist.
Yeah, from the list.
From the list. It would come to a dermatologist in the UK or in Zambia, and they would respond. And the idea is that they would give them medical advice. They have knowledge about what's available in each clinic, and they have knowledge about what medicines are available in Zambia. So
that brings me on to my point, because you've got this nasty rash, and it's a rare rash or something, and they say, well, you need this such and such and such a cream. And they go, well, we don't have that.
No, that's it. So you have to be pragmatic about it.
Right.
So you can only suggest things that they are able to get. Otherwise, it's completely pointless. So for example, we had a 9-year-old girl who presented with shingles, which was on her face and extending into her eye, which is incredibly dangerous because it can cause blindness. So they took a photo of the girl, which was incredibly helpful. The virtual doctor diagnosed it. Back here.
Yeah.
Was able to suggest which medicines to use, was able to look on the list and realise that they didn't have quite the correct drops, but we could then say, well, look, you don't have those drops, let's use X, Y and Z instead, and prevent this girl from going blind. Well,
amazing.
That's a fantastic outcome,
just by using an app.
Yeah.
And the dermatologist or whoever, or the doctor at this end, is giving their time volunteering.
Yes, absolutely.
As you do.
And then, yes, as I do. And then the idea is that, well, that has educated the healthcare worker, so it's improved the patient's outcome, but there's also some education taking place. And then next time that healthcare worker sees somebody with shingles involving their eye, they don't need to ask because they've got that education. So we're upskilling them as well, which is just
at the moment, the virtual doctors are operating in Zambia.
Yes.
Northern Rhodesia as was. So how far can you reach into Zambia? Is it countrywide?
Yeah, so we are in 70 clinics at the moment, and we estimate we're covering a population of 1.6 million people, which is quite extraordinary. We are keen to carry on expanding into Zambia, but we're also very keen to move into Malawi, which has even less doctors per population and is much poorer than Zambia. So we're trying to raise £40,000 to enable us to do that expansion.
It's amazing, isn't it? 40,000. OK, on the one hand, it is quite a lot of money. But on the other hand, when you think of how much value for money medically that £40,000 is going to give to a population of a country.
It's extraordinary,
It's
isn't
extraordinary.
it? Yeah. And, we're a very small charity. We don't have big land cruisers. We have only 4 paid members of staff. The rest of us are all volunteering. The doctors are all volunteering.
It's quite remarkable.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable.
We're going to talk about what you're doing from your end of it in just a moment.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll come back after the Lighthouse Family. Lighthouse Family and Ocean Drive. BBC Radio Oxford, Annie Otham with you, in the company of Dr. Fran Fieldhouse, who's going to complete a 16-mile run a day. I keep saying it now. So
yeah, thanks. I have to now, don't I?
And that's the distance sometimes patients walk for treatment in parts of Africa to raise money. This is what you're doing, to raise money for virtual doctors, and you've just been explaining some of the things you do. Are there times when the health workers in the middle of nowhere, sometimes in Africa at a small health clinic, will use this virtual doctor app, and you look at it and you think, don't know, can I help? Particularly if it's surgery.
So surgery, obviously you can't, and there's always going to be times when patients need to be in hospital because they need an operation. You can't do anything about that. But what you can do in those instances is stabilise them before they get to surgery. So, for example, we had a woman in premature labour this week, and I think the healthcare worker hadn't quite realised the severity of the situation, and the virtual doctor volunteer was able to explain the severity, but also to say, you need to get steroids into this woman to help her baby's lungs develop before she gives birth, because this will make a huge difference to the outcome of the baby, and you need to get antibiotics into her because her waters have broken, so that she doesn't get an infection. And in fact, the feedback we got to that doctor was, thank you for your generosity, the advice saved a life.
Yeah. And quite often you will be doing stuff as virtual doctors on these apps with those health workers out in the middle of nowhere in Africa, where you get the feedback is that the advice you gave saved a life.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Quite simply.
And so sometimes it is just, saying, well, that person definitely needs an operation, but if you give these medicines first, you've got time to transport them to hospital, and then their outcome will be better, they'll be safer.
It's all about outcomes, isn't it?
And I mean, the distances they're going, so the most remote clinic we have is on an island. If the boat is at the island, it's an 8-hour trip to the hospital.
If the boat is
If
there.
the boat is not at the island, it's a 24-hour trip. And patients are dying on this boat trying to get to the hospital. Well, if you can stabilise them before, or if you can treat them on site, it's expensive going to hospital. There aren't ambulances.
It is such a simple thing in many ways, isn't it? A health worker has the app contacts you guys. You guys back in the UK give your time for free. You save lives, you give the right medical information, but at the same time you're educating the health workers. Yeah. This isn't I'm personally, because you're operating in a country I'm very close to, you're in Zambia, but, because I'll just point out to everyone else, my husband was brought up there. But having said that, the amount that you need is relatively small.
Yeah, it's a tiny amount because it's a really, really simple idea. And I think that's what... that's why I feel so passionate about it. It's not big, it's not clever, it's really simple. It's a mobile phone, and I have answered questions from healthcare workers while I've been camping in France. You can do this anywhere. It just takes a bit of knowledge.
And what are you hoping to raise?
So, me personally, with my run, I've set my target. So it was £1,000, and people were incredibly generous. So I've upped it to £2,500. But
Good.
The sky's the limit. Individual people, fantastic. Giving small amounts, large amounts, that's lovely. If there are companies out there that want to give me a big amount, bring it on.
You're saving lives. You are direct. Yeah. I mean, I suppose sometimes when people give money, they know generally that the money's going to a good cause and it will hopefully help other people in whatever walk of life and whatever it is they do. This, you can see there's a direct correlation to the money raised, to the work that you doctors do, to actually saving lives for somebody out in the African bush.
Yes.
End of.
Yeah.
They've got an app, they get hold of you. What do I do? You tell them, they do it, life saved.
Exactly.
End of.
And how simple is that?
Yeah. It's not sexy, it's not headline grabbing
exactly.
or anything like that.
Yeah.
And what were you saying? Is it something like £40,000 or something?
Yeah, £40,000 to go into Malawi. And then, so the other thing that we've started doing more of, you talked about the education, Annie, is that so for ongoing education, these healthcare workers, normally they go into the capital, Lusaka. Well, when they go in for their education, that leaves their healthcare centre unmanned. So
if someone does this long walk to get to the healthcare centre, the chances are there's nobody there.
There's nobody there. So, given technology, why aren't we educating them on site?
Yeah,
So me and my colleague Minnie, who also volunteers with the medical team, we have started recording audio podcasts. So
Fantastic.
they're little 20-minute things on pneumonia, high blood pressure, eczema, simple topics that the healthcare workers can download off their mobile phones.
Learn it,
treat it, exactly.
If people would like to support you in your run, so how many miles altogether do you think you're going to run?
So it's 67 miles from Bourton-in-the-Water to Henley. Very happy to have people, waving me as I go. So it'll be me, my long-suffering husband is supporting me, and the dog will be doing probably about half of it with me.
When the dog goes, I've had enough.
Yeah.
You're on your own, kiddo. Don't care if you are a doctor.
He's been very good so far, even in the snow, bless him, he's been out with me.
And I think you've got a Just Giving page as well. So.
I do, yeah. So it's Fran Fieldhouse, yes.
Wish you every success. Virtual doctors, if you'd like to learn more, but I think it's a terrific thing that you're doing. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much for your time, Annie.